Hello, my name is Alex Gao, and today we will be looking at the orchestral literature of Guatemala. Now, before we look at the actual Guatemalan literature itself, I think it's really important that we look at a brief history of European classical music in South America, as many South American classical composers have been very heavily influenced by multiple genres and styles of music that range from dance music to folk music and also European music. So, the Europeans landed in the Americas around the 15th century, and with them, they brought their musical traditions. And these musical traditions intermingled with African and indigenous musical traditions, and that gave rise to Latin American music. And Latin American music is a term that spans many different styles such as cumbia, bossa nova, tango, and many more. And these styles went on to very heavily influence many South American and Latin American composers later on in the 19th, 20th, and 21st centuries. And of the composers in Guatemala, one of those composers who was very heavily influenced by traditional Guatemalan music was Jesus Castillo. Now, Jesus Castillo was born on October 1st, 1891, and he was a major figure in the musical movement of Guatemalan musical nationalism. And he studied piano and composition in Quetzaltenango, and many of his works draw on traditional Guatemalan folk music, and they reference traditional Mayan and Guatemalan folk tales that people from Guatemala would know. And this is very similar to what we see with things like German nationalism, with composers such as Wagner referencing folk tales and mythology in their work as well. And some of those significant works are Paul Kaba, La Donchelle Itzik, and Estalas de Tikal. And today we will be listening to Paul Kaba. Now, before we take a listen, I want to give you a brief summary of what this piece is about. Now, Paul Kaba is a ballet that Jesus Castillo wrote the music for, and it tells the story, a traditional Mayan story of sacrificing a maiden to the god of corn for a good, fruitful harvest. And this is the kind of story that many people from Guatemala, specifically those who have indigenous heritage, would probably know. So let's take a listen to that now. Very nice. I think of all the pieces that I listened to while researching this project, Paul Cabal really stuck out to me. I personally love ballet music, and I think that Paul Cabal is no exception. I just love the character and everything about it. And so moving on from Jesus Castillo, we later have Jorge Sarmientos. And Jorge Sarmientos is a 20th, 21st century composer, And he was born in 1931, February 19th, the day after me. And he studied piano and composition at the Guatemalan National Conservatory of Music. However, later on, he would go on to study conducting at the Paris Conservatory and became quite well known as a conductor, conducting many, many different ensembles throughout the world. And he was also a very prolific composer, composing over 100 works ranging from solo unaccompanied music to full orchestral works. And many of those orchestral works are concertos, specifically concertos for piano and marimba and percussion in general. Some of those significant works are obviously his piano concerto. I mentioned his concerto for marimba and orchestra, and also his concerto for five timpani and orchestra. And I think of the works that I listened to while researching this project, I particularly liked the concerto for marimba and orchestra. It's just such a lovely piece, and really, he writes so well for the marimba. It's so marimba-y in like the best way possible. So let's take a listen to that now. Lovely, lovely recording. And lastly, I wanted to cover why this mattered, because I think with covering orchestral literature from any group of people that is marginalized, especially in European or American countries, it's important to have that discussion. And there are many reasons why covering literature like this matters. Firstly of all, diversity of repertoire. A lot of opera companies and orchestras and ballet companies have often talked about finding themselves in a rut, performing the same pieces over and over and over again by the same European men that have been dead for hundreds of years. And I think that introducing a lot of these works by marginalized communities, communities of color, is very, very important, because it kind of is a great way to refresh and revitalize the standard repertoire that we already have. And it also keeps audiences and performers interested, because as many of us know, performing the same pieces over and over and over again gets very, very dull. If you ask any musician, any orchestral musician around Christmas time, the piece that they get most bored of, it is Nutcracker. Many of my teachers have talked about how they almost fall asleep because they're so bored of playing it so often. And it makes sense. If you hear the same thing over and over again, you kind of get tired. And that also ties into the next one, which is bringing in new audience members. Now, if you play the same thing over and over and over again, that might be somebody's favorite, but that won't bring in any new audience members who are looking for something different. And many of us talk about how we need new young audience members. And a great way to do that is playing pieces that we do not play as often. Pieces, like I said, by communities of color, by marginalized communities. And so this is really why this kind of repertoire matters so much. Thank you so much for listening. Like I said, my name is Alex Gao, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.